Hello everyone and welcome to Kaylie's Theology, where we discuss what the Bible has to say on our world today, and today's topic is biblical marriage. I chose this topic because I believe God is a consistent being. He wouldn't contradict himself. Yet in regards to the message sent out about marriage by more traditional churches, I have noticed there's contradiction. With this video, I'm going to discuss what traditional churches claim is a biblical marriage, my claims and my refutes to the traditional church's claims. I have found these claims with the website Got Questions, where it addresses three main points and comes to its own conclusion. They addressed one point of God only sees it as marriage when it becomes legal, in reference to verses like 1 Peter 2:17 and Romans 13:1-7, which the verse says, "Let every soul be subject to the higher power, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God." It goes on to say that we are not to resist it, that the law is supposed to correct us so that we do good, and that we should render all to whom we have dues, to have customs according to the law's customs. The correction mentioned from this website for that perspective is that marriage hasn't always been subject to the law, yet we should still seek legalization. Their second point was, God only sees it as marriage when there is a ceremony, and uses the presentation of Eve to Adam in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 2:22, similarly to how a father would present his daughter. In John chapter 2, Jesus attended a wedding ceremony. The website concludes that there is no indication that there is a ceremonial requirement, but it is a fruit in God's eyes, so we should seek it. The third point is about sexual intercourse, to try to refute the claim that God only sees a couple as being married when they have had sex. Some see it as, you're not truly married until you do it. Others say, when you do it, you become married. The website refutes it with, if a couple is legally and ceremonially married, but for some reason is unable to engage in sexual intercourse, that couple is still considered to be married. They refuted this point of the other perspective with 1 Corinthians 7:2 by claiming sex before marriage is immorality. But the verse itself says to avoid sex before marriage, everyone should be married. The immorality verses are Hebrews 13:4, 1 Corinthians 6:18, where it says to flee from fornication, much like it says to flee from sin. When presented with the story of Isaac and Rebekah in Genesis 24:1-10, they say it was an arranged marriage and there were tests on the marriage. Their concluding point was, as long as the requirements are reasonable and not against the Bible, a man and a woman should seek formal government recognition and should follow whatever ceremonial practices are typically employed to recognize a couple as officially married. If possible, a man and a woman should consummate the marriage, fulfilling the physical aspect of the one flesh principle. But I have a different perspective, one that looks deeper into his word. Specifically against the claim in the third point of Isaac and Rebekah that it was arranged. Verse 8 is part of the dialogue between Abraham and his servants. In regards to finding a wife for Isaac, quote, if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free of this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there, unquote. Then it follows in verses 57-58, where the servant found the woman and her family. Quote, they said, let us call the young woman and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? Unquote. This contradicts the third point, because there was the choice, not the arrangement. I do partly agree with the second point, that a biblical marriage does not require a ceremony, but it is approved by God. So it is a choice to do so. That's my position. It is a choice. Their first point I somewhat disagree with. I do not think a biblical marriage is defined by the law, but is defined by God, when he chooses two people. A more in-depth of my position is how, during the time of Isaac and Rebekah, God chose two people to be married, and when they chose to get together, they went into a tent, and they became married, which I'm guessing because of going into the tent, they had a celebration of the human body. My other point is, and this is the part where traditional churches ignore, is that Mary was pregnant with Jesus prior to being married, to the point where her fiancé was wanting to leave her. If God wanted to emphasize the importance of not being pregnant prior to the legalization of marriage, the Bible would have something along the lines of, quote, after you get married, you will be pregnant with a son, and it is important that you remain untouched by your husband, end quote. But that isn't the case. The reasoning why churches ignore this is because there wasn't sex, but the fact remains the same. The role model of life was growing in Mary's belly before she was married, and most pregnancy comes from sex. This and the other points I brought up leads me to believe in modern times, when God chooses two people, which you can find out through lots of prayer and guidance from the Holy Spirit, and they choose each other, meaning they start dating, they should treat the relationship like a marriage while seeking legality reasonably, not leaving even your spouse with no money because of the expenses of marriage. Essentially, dating is the marriage before the marriage. You need to keep yourself pure until then and keep the relationship exclusive. If you wanted to wait till the legalization of marriage, you can do that, as there is no harm. It's just biblically backed that the legalization is not the sticking point of marriage, but it is God who chooses the people, and the people who choose each other. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a question or comment, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Have a wonderful day.